Welcome to Weekly World News on SpringNectar TV, brought to you by Vibha Ramesh, Los Angeles, United States. First, the top headlines. Land set to reopen for drilling of oil and gas in the United States. Florida judge scraps mask mandate. India's Prime Minister encourages Made in India goods. Capital sees COVID spike. China intensifies safety measures as it battles a new outbreak of COVID-19. Poor execution of evacuation plan in Ukraine. Boris Johnson and 10 others banned entry into Russia. Moving on to news in detail. In a first under the Biden administration, plans are underway to drill natural gas and public oil. The move is expected to bring the oil prices down, which have in recent days hit unprecedented prices, as well as fight climate crisis. To that end, the Interior Department will engage in the first onshore sale of natural gas and oil. Under the existing lease agreement, loyalty rates for companies will be on the higher side, presumably to limit global emissions. Data has it that new leases will increase to 18.25% from the existing rate of 12.5%. However, economists opined that the impact will be comparatively small. Meanwhile, Monica Medina, the Assistant U.S. Secretary of State for Environmental Affairs, said that the U.S. would leave no stone unturned in addressing the climate crisis, as it calls upon Australia to increase its 2030 pledge. In her words, she said, "We're calling on every country that didn't increase their target to raise it. We have to stay within 1.5 degrees of heating. Every tenth of a degree above that leads to greater disruption, greater destruction, and we can't get those back." And on Monday, a federal judge from Florida overrode Biden's mask mandate for public transportation. To that extent, Judge Catherine Kimball Mizell produced a 59-page ruling which scraps the national mask mandate, which demands mask wearing in public transport, including airports, airplanes, and other transportation. She said that a limited remedy would be no remedy at all, because our system does not permit agencies to act unlawfully even in pursuit of desirable ends. The court declares unlawful and vacates the mask mandate. However, news as of Wednesday has it that the Department of Justice has appealed to override her judgment. Over to India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi voiced his thoughts on the need to become self-reliant as a country. To that end, he encouraged the purchase and use of locally made products. According to him, using homegrown or homemade products for the next 25 years would address the issue of unemployment to a large extent. In his words, he said, "India can't afford to remain stagnant today. Whether we're awake or asleep, we can't continue to remain where we are. The global situation is such that the world is thinking on how to become self-reliant." With that, he also requested the saints to pass on the message to the next generation, as he said, "I would request the saints of the country to teach people to buy local products only." Meanwhile, on Sunday, India's capital breached the 5% mark in terms of the number of positive COVID cases. In effect, the positivity rate jumped to 5.33% from a mere 0.5% in just 2 weeks. Subsequently, health authorities have reiterated the need to get tested and increase safety measures such as mask wearing. Said a senior doctor at LNJP Hospital, "People who are developing symptoms are not going for COVID-19 tests largely. But with a surge in cases and the positivity rate beyond 5% again, I would urge people to go for testing if they are having symptoms. Even those going for home isolation should go for testing." Statistics as of Monday show a one-day spike of 2,183 infections, taking the overall tally to 43 million. Moving on, grappling with a record number of COVID cases, China strengthens its safety protocols and COVID-related restrictions. To that effect, the economic zone at the Zhengzhou airport called for a 14-day lockdown starting Friday. And authorities have requested residents of northwestern China to refrain from making unwanted trips outside their neighborhood. Several organizations are encouraging their employees to work from home. That said, the city of Xi'an did not impose a lockdown. According to statistics, Shanghai recorded a total of 23,513 cases of COVID-19 on April 15, out of which 19,923 were asymptomatic. On a national level, the cases are spiking across the country, prompting the need for lockdown in several regions. This means majority of its 25 million residents are under lockdown. And here's what we have on the latest in Ukraine. The evacuation plan did not turn out the way it should have, leaving several civilians in the lurch. News has it that the buses waiting at the humanitarian corridor, which was slated to open at 2 a.m., were seen waiting even at around 6 a.m. as evacuees did not turn up as planned. While everything was done as planned from the Ukrainian end, the Russians failed to execute their side of the agreement. This incident prompted Ukraine's deputy prime minister to blame Russia for its lack of control over their own military on the ground. On the other hand, the United States is working 24/7 to provide security assistance to Ukraine. Here's what White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said at a briefing on the US's involvement in ensuring civilian protection in Ukraine. We have been working with Ukrainians and the Ukrainian military to determine exactly the kind of security assistance they need for this stage of the war. That has included an increase in artillery and ammunition. Moving on, the security agreement signed between Solomon Islands and China has raised concerns in Australia. To this end, the Australian government sounded off an alert about the same as it believed that the discreetly negotiated pact could in all likelihood undermine the nation's stability. Expressing their disappointment and concern over the deal, two ministers stated on Tuesday, "We're concerned about the lack of transparency with which this agreement has been developed, noting its potential to undermine stability in our region," they said. On that note, the spokesperson for Foreign Affairs tweeted that despite all of his tough talk on Scott Morrison's watch, our region has become less secure. Over to the UK, over 10 British government personnel have been barred entry into Russia as their actions were deemed hostile by the Russian Foreign Ministry. To that end, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab, Home Secretary Priti Patel, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, and Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak were among those that were banned from entering Russia. The Russian ministry stated that the primary reason for their decision was London's unbridled information and political campaign aimed at isolating Russia internationally, creating conditions for containing our country and strangling the domestic economy. It further added that in a sense, the British leadership is deliberately aggravating the situation around Ukraine, pumping the Kyiv regime with lethal weapons and coordinating similar efforts on the part of NATO. Replying to this move made by Russia, a UK spokesperson remarked, "The UK and our international partners stand united in condemning the Russian government's reprehensible actions in Ukraine and calling for the Kremlin to stop the war. We remain resolute in our support for Ukraine." And on Thursday, Queen Elizabeth celebrated her 96th birthday filled with memories of her late husband. Marking the occasion, a portrait of the Queen with her two favorite ponies was unveiled on Wednesday. Apart from that, she spent her special day in private. Over to Palestine, multiple clashes erupted in Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem on Friday, thereby leaving over 100 people injured. Most of the injury was caused by police intervention, who resorted to the use of stun grenades and rubber bullets to arrest the violence. News has it that the violence that erupted in the place of faith was triggered when Israeli forces entered the holy site before dawn to get rid of the rocks and stones that were presumably collected in anticipation of a subsequent violence. And on Sunday, exactly 2 days after the Israeli-Palestinian clash, 20 more Palestinians were injured at the same site, involving multiple incidents. This took the tally of the wounded to 170. With that, we come to this week's Did You Know? Did you know that a single watermelon sold for $6,125? Even though it was a one-time thing, $6,125 does raise brows. Well, it happened in 2008 in Japan, and the watermelon in question is said to be a Densuke watermelon. Grown only in the island of Hokkaido, this watermelon is known to have a very different kind of sweetness and is hard and crisp. It weighed roughly 18 pounds and was one among 68 that was sold that harvest season. And it's not new for the Densuke watermelon to sport super high price tags because in 2005, the same kind was sold for $3,000. So if you're looking at laying your hands on one of this kind, be sure to save up enough. That brings us to the end of this week's World News. I'll see you again next Friday with more World News on Spring Nectar TV. Stay safe.